Rinpoche first invites us to enter into these teachings by setting our mind in the noble disposition of bodhicitta, thinking that we will study and practice Dharma in order to bring each and every sentient being in the infinity of space to the state of totally pure, utterly perfect and precious enlightenment. And in our study of Dharma today, this afternoon, we are looking at the Vajrayana pledges or vows. In the various categories of this section, some of which we touched on yesterday, we have the essence of the Vajrayana pledges, the various categories, how they can be acquired if they're not already held, and so on and so forth. This afternoon, we'll look at the section which deals with how to safeguard or how to nurture those vows. There are, in fact, a whole host of different categories and points in this section. We would never have time to enter into all of them, and so we will look at them through three main aspects, or three main parts of them. One thing is that each of the main levels of Tantra has its own vows. So the Kriya Tantra has its own Kriya Tantra vows, Charya Tantra has its own Charya Tantra vows, Yoga Tantra has its own Yoga Tantra vows, and the highest Yoga Tantra has its own specific vows. This is very similar to in a way, to what we have with the different levels of ordination or self-liberation vows, where there are many different stages or levels, each with their own things to be looked after, to be guarded. One of the main aspects of the various Vajrayana vows are the vows related to the 5 Buddha families. And these are common to most of the Tantras, and they form a basis for the pledges or the samaya of most of the Tantras. In fact, when we look at what are called the 5 Buddha family pledges, then there are those which are common to the Tantras, and then there are the 5 Buddha family pledges or samaya specific to the highest Yoga Tantra. And today we'll be looking at the one which is common to all the Tantras.
Tieto Kahakanao Munisena Mare, Sonji Gila, Go Song to Yuante, Chenli, the number gas on Gila Yopare. That day, Taki Chado, Songo Chado, Tuji Chado, Yuante, Chenli Chadi, Chanoma Nadelan, that Ringa, Seopa Sini, that in this Yopare.
Now we talk about the 5 Buddha families, but we should know that these are definitely not 5 separate things. These are 5 different aspects of something which is indivisible, and that any Buddha has those 5 aspects which are intimately related with 5 things, which are the body, speech, mind, qualities and activities. Body, speech, mind, qualities and activities. So these are present in every Buddha, and although these families highlight one or another of these, they are aspects, they are not separate Buddhas, different Buddhas. These are represented by the 5 main Buddhas, which are the heads of those families, and which are, we can't really twist around, but they should be represented on the shrine somewhere. There should be the 5 leaders of the 5 Buddha families. I can't twist that much. But anyway, normally in Buddhist temples, Vajrayana temples, they're represented. Yeah, they're the ones that up there above the main Buddha, you have the wooden frieze with 5 Buddhas carved into it. They're the 5 Buddha families. Now, what these are is an outer representation of the body, speech, mind, qualities and activities that are true to any Buddha. So then these each have their attributes, such as each one associated with a specific color and so on. But we're not talking about that just now. So there is not one Buddha of all of the Buddhas which doesn't, how can we say, belong to one of these 5 families. These 5 Buddha families cover everything, every possibility. And in another way, we can say that taken together, they sum up what the totality of a Buddha is. So then, because these embrace all of the Buddhas and all the families, we'll be looking at the general vows that we undertake related to each of these families. So the first of these families is called the Tathagata family, and this is related to the physical qualities of a Buddha, or the body aspect, body, speech, mind, qualities and activities. It's the body aspect. Tathagata family is the body aspect, and that is represented by the head of that family, who is Buddha Vairochana.
다 대나 다송자 가리송 거와리라나 가송아 송치 쳔비 돈비 히비까라나 니쇼 돈비 저 게바 추드 제저 상체 당지 제처럼세 처럼 봐서 콘라 드니 히바양이 뭐야 대동 드니는 이거 아까리 거와리지나나 공주선라 샤선좀 봐 이게 더 요니 다디 대연자고 라거나 안다다 처럼 봐서 디디라나 다 공주 넘어서
Now, the commitment that's related to the Tathagata family of Vairochana is all based around the maintaining of bodhicitta. And we saw in the previous teachings in this series that one of the main points in bodhicitta is to maintain the three types of right conduct: the right conduct of avoiding harm, the right conduct of nurturing virtue, and the right conduct of benefiting other beings. Those three aspects of right conduct are at the heart of bodhicitta, and to maintain those is the samaya, the pledge of this family. The basis for that right conduct of avoiding harm, nurturing virtue, benefiting others, is the taking of refuge. So the observing and the safeguarding of refuge is very important in respect to this family. That was the first one. The second Buddha family is the Vajra family, and they are related to the Buddha mind. So out of body, speech, mind, qualities, activities, they're related to the mind. And the Buddha mind is represented by the head of the family, Buddha Akshobhya. So the attributes of Akshobhya are the Vajra and bell. And for the Vajrayana yogin to possess or carry the Vajra and bell is the commitment of this family. So then Rinpoche is pointing to there's a Vajra and bell which are on the shrine tables here, and he's saying that the Vajrayana practicer should have a proper Vajra and bell. Their Vajra and bell should have all of the right attributes and qualities, not just any old Vajra and bell. Well, actually, the ones that are here on the table, they're a bit on the large side. They don't have to be as big as that. The large or small doesn't matter too much. But how the design is done, quite how the various details of the different parts of the Vajra and bell are done, that is important. Then, as far as practice goes, then the commitment is to practice Mahamudra in relation to this family. And this means, amongst other things, cultivating a view of the non-own existence of perceived reality. So rather than seeing rocks and stones and buildings as being solid and existing in their own right, then one should cultivate an understanding of the union of voidness and appearance.
Tenina Drupon Khenpo Lhabu la, teni nyepa dong, goto, xieje dong, de la guya xieje. Tenye la Drupon Lhabu dong, lama nyo de, Khenpo nyo de rong, zongje. Ta de na, dojiri ke tangzi. Tu ke tangzi la, nanda dojiri ke tangzi la, nanda ta kire cheba cheba de, ta ri ngu nyin ro swa.
Also, part of the samaya of this family is to always be careful to respect one's own gurus and also one's teachers, khenpos. This is also part of the samaya. So all of those different things, from the Vajra and bell through the practice, through to the respect and devotion for the masters, these are all part of, we can say, either the Vajra family commitment or the commitments to the Buddha mind. It's the same thing.
Tani no samba renchari. Ta renchari je damsi re. Ta renchari je damsi de ta landa wo le song dong tali xie na. Ta renchen jun de. Song ji renchen jun de si wa. Mo ya renchen jun de yan ba dong. Ta song ji ge song dong ge na ge song tu yang dian chen li yo bi no ni. Ta yang dian. Song ji ge yang dian. Ta de re.
Now, the third family we'll consider is called the jewel family or the Ratna family. And the head of that family is Ratna Sambhava. Ratna Sambhava is the head of the jewel family. And in terms of the Buddha's body, speech, mind, qualities and activity, this is the family of the Buddha's qualities.
다디 당지 송제는 뭐야 취지고 니 좀 봐. 취진세죠. 다롱거 공시히 취지 좀 봐. 뭐야 취히 터나 공시히. 롱거 다견라 편도지 공 이야라 편도바 세바도 다 취. 이제는 드리지라 고거 말이 뭐야 가서 많이 라인 문이 송지 간다 원동 거 드리 거 말이 너는 롱거 ngọ 고니 yenbala pen tozi jire tsadi de dangde chu chwa dio pare de yin na chu ji gon ni yan la pen to ba dong deni nor si da de zo ji rong la ban jong zhao yo den di wen na yan la yin ba dong yan la pen bar xie ba deni de zo rong la yong ni ba yo na men ji ba xia ji yin ba xie deni zo len zhao xie wang ya yan la da ra na na ma da ba wang ya de ta ma dong na yong da ji chen jian da mo bo yo ba ra wang ya de zhan dong na men ji ba xia ji yin ba xie dong ha li xia 뭐야 다 들리셔 봐도 되니요 산재 통제라 상비고니 다 니제강 다 산재 통제라 너나 편바시 뭐야 니제야 보시니 뭐야 다 들으셔지더 아니人家이제 당직 송사들래
what one needs to do to maintain the commitment to this family is to become a holder of the Dharma, so that one has the wealth of Dharma to be able to share with other people, to be able to give to other people. And Rinpoche was talking yesterday or the day before about having the authentic Dharma and giving the authentic Buddha Dharma to other people. So this is one form of wealth to give. If there is material wealth of any sort, goods, financial wealth, then the commitment of this family is to use it in generosity for whoever needs it. That's with the material wealth. Then the third type of generosity, in the three classical types of generosity, there's Dharma, generosity with Dharma, generosity with goods, And the third type is the generosity of protection from fear, protecting beings from the fear of samsara, from all sorts of fears. So if the opportunity arises, one can help a person, somebody, not to be so afraid, upset, and so on, then this is the gift of strength, the gift of peace of mind.
I don't know. Yiba. Pemiri ji dangzi. Teni pemiri ji dangzi de da kariri lana ha sonu dong ni na wo ba me. Teni na da songji ge ge su tu yang dian chen li ni kariri lana tu mari song. Song gong wo.
I forgot to say before, then still in this dual family, and then also the practice is to cultivate loving compassion for all beings. It's very important. Then fourth we come to the lotus family, so the Padma family or lotus family. The head of that family is Buddha Amitabha, and in terms of body, speech, mind, qualities and activities, Amitabha represents the Buddha speech.
Ta di song xia ge dong ba na kariri la na shi su su ta ba nong song chi qian ji dong ba song mo ji dong ba ji ta dong ba san de la na ta gu ba xi wang ya de la na nyang lai xi ta de di xie ji de song pe mi ri ji dong ji ri.
The commitment for this family is to keep the three levels of vows, the self-liberation vows, the bodhisattva vows, and the Mahayana vows. So a careful attention to vows is the main samaya.
Tindila nga teba chenpo nga so ho do ji tebi nyon lai chen kan yin nga ndo ya po yo ba mare ya so so taba ya po mare ta tendi si me pala so ba chi xie nan tendi ri xio ba mare de cha tendi de dong ba san ka de ya po de tong ya po ni de ku ya xie ya po ni de nyon lai xie ga bare ka so nga ro xie ya so sa xiong sa ta cha yin na ji la tian ni jin chong wa ko na ma do de la nga ba ro chi me ya de ta cha yin de la ta cha yin ya po xie ga bare.
This means to be devoted to those vows, to have a heartfelt respect for their value and their qualities, and on the contrary, never to disrespect them in the sense of thinking or saying, I belong to this type, for instance, I'm a Vajrayana practicer, and the self-liberation vows are no good, or whichever way round it goes. Any deprecating of any of those levels of vows, any disrespect towards them or towards the holding of them, shows an ignorance of their purpose, because as Rinpoche explained the other day, the one depends on the other. If there isn't the first level of vow in place, like the first floor of a building, then the second and the third can't be there. They each have their great value.
다利用的上弄东西现在呢다 당着당要着吧呀다 대 배나는 송진저 우지家庭的些个送推养店成立桥掉巴的
The fifth Buddha family is the family of action or karma, and the karma family has as its head Buddha Amoghasiddhi, and of the body, speech, mind, qualities and activities, this represents the activity of the enlightened ones.
다 디 송지 당신라오지 다 가린라오지 차원와리 라나나 다 현초 홍초 송초 라소바 디니도 혀와 제바 온 dropo라소바 기진온로 그리 란조마루바 다 드바시바 다 된다고래
the dampa the leshiking manakara sonsa
신초 농초 초반다고 뭐라고 모두가 뭐냐 다자.
So then, in order to keep this samaya, or the commitment of this family, then one needs to fulfill the various one needs to accomplish the various activities of Vajrayana. Now the way these are expressed are either as the performing the outer, the inner, the secret practices of the deities, or we can put it another way, another aspect, which is to perform the four activities which are peaceful, increasing, empowering, and wrathful. Peaceful, increasing, empowering, and wrathful. If we take all five of those together now, then by observing those various things that have just been listed, then this is what is meant by maintaining the samaya to the five families. So we went step by step, very simply, through the various specific samayas, but now we come back to the first point because it's an important point and it's something that we ought to know. We ought to take away from these teachings, and then afterwards it should be something we know just like that, which is that although there are the five families, they are no more than these five aspects of the one Buddha mind or of any Buddha. That is to say, these are the way that the Buddha's body, that is to say, physical manifestations, speech, mind, all the qualities and the various activities, these are the way that they are specifically represented, but that they are always never separate. They are all part of the one Buddha mind. Now, if we develop this idea, as it is developed, for better understanding, if we develop it a little bit, not a lot, then if we take any one of those Buddhas, for instance, Buddha Amitabha, who's at the head of the Lotus family, the Padma family, then Buddha Amitabha, of course, has body, speech, mind, qualities, and activities. So within any one of these five, then there will be those five aspects. So there'll be, if Amitabha is the speech aspect, there's the body of the speech of the speech, the mind of the speech, the qualities of the speech, the activity of the speech, and so on. This will give us actually 25 quite specific categories or subcategories to consider. So this sort of way we can see how out of one thing it develops into 5 and it develops into 25. This sort of deeper understanding of the specific qualities helps us to understand all of these hundreds and thousands of Vajrayana deities. So therefore, if we think of just a couple of the Vajrayana deities and practices. If we take, for instance, Jawajamso, then when in the practice of Jawajamso, then Jawajamso's head, or like guru or supreme figure, is Buddha Amitabha. His crowning glory is Amitabha. So we know, therefore, that Jawajamso is part of the Lotus family, the Padma family. And if we take Vajravarahi, for instance, then her crowning glory is Buddha Akshobhya. So we know from that Vajravarahi is part of the Vajra family. And so on and so forth. Each of these hundreds or thousands of different, what we call deities or practices, belongs one way or another to one of the 5 families. There's not one which is not included in these 5 families.
Te ta daga gare phya kumare lana sonu jingaro su tona ta penana tata wobo me la bare ta di shu kha swa da o songji ge song re din dua song ji kha ko to bare ta di phomola so ba de ti ge doji ri ta o ta ta kha swa da songji ge tu re din ga song ji kha ko bare dindi na ta ge wa de na 송지 찌그러 와래 되어 봐 갖고 와래 때마도 되니 못 보지 매 봐.
What's the benefit of all of this complexity? Well, the benefit is that, for instance, if we are involved or involved with Amitabha practice, then once we know that Amitabha, this is linked with the Lotus family. The Lotus family is what? This is the representation or the emanation of the speech of the Buddhas. Or if we know that with Vajravarahi, she is the Vajra family. So what is the Vajra family? This is the expression of the mind of the Buddhas. Each time it takes us back to the one Buddha mind with its various qualities. It helps us to understand how all these various deities and practices are specific aspects of the one Buddha mind.
Ta deta yapoji ha ko ona. Deni la deta gon la ndo ngare. Ta ha ma gona la tongji kha kha ndo. Ama sha ge modon farense mo rahi mando kha ndo chon bare. Ta deni kha ndo chon ro di de la kali chere ta ti la deta piti ji mara ba ndo ji. Pe kali kha bo cho bare. 오, 다 당지 뭐지 송지 띠래로 되라. 와, 다저 가리시나 제바만 뒤송지 지 따와 놓니 했더니시나. 데 라간디라 간리 하르. 뭐래?
If we understand this principle well, then it will very certainly improve our practice and take our practice to wiser, better places. If we don't understand it, then the contrary to that is thinking of each practice as something very separate. And we become like nationalists. Just like you have, the English and the French and the Hungarians and the Russians and the Americans and whatever it is. And then because there's this separation, I'm this, you're that, these things are very distinct, then it can lead to all sorts of troubles. Whereas when everyone is working for the same cause within the same area, then there isn't that at all. So that we can understand that all of these different practices are not different things. They are all working towards the same end in their own specific ways.
Na hier ji ge yo la ka ri zo gong muni jin din sa ge song de zo ji xie 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 na mi la gong dong ha ko ya bo ji ha gong go zu gong ji ri da da ra hi ya mo a ma sha ge man da la no pa ji chwa de no re.
Now this is a topic Rinpoche would really like to develop sometime when he comes in the future, because it's very important to give us a much closer idea of what Vajrayana practice itself really is and how these different so-called deities or practices do fit into the scheme of things. So we don't fall into this territorialism of, I'm for this practice or he's that practice or whatever it is. But there isn't the time in this particular course. For instance, in this morning's teaching with the meditation instructions, we could see there's quite a lot of work to be done, hard work to be done in different areas. There's this to be done and that to be done with the mind when it's at rest. There's this to be done, that to be done with the mind when it's in movement, and so many questions to ask. And the actual work is a lot of hard work because we need to actually do it until it's very, very clearly understood. But then, even though there are all those details, even though there's all of that hard work and industry that's needed, if we understand the one purpose behind it all, which is simply to understand the mind, then we can understand and value each of those specific aspects, because each of them brings a bit more information and understanding that in the end helps us to know the mind. And it's the same with Vajrayana practice. Each practice has an enormous amount of details and specificities. You have to do this and do that, and each one's quite different in the details. But if we do know that all of those different practices stem from the one place, they're leading us towards the one realization, then we'll be able to practice them with much more happiness and confidence. The qualities will come out much more quickly.
Gabo, Jobo, Deva, Dunga, Oya, Jova, Nipala, so not to pay Mombodu, the Gildina, sent Gil Danudu, then he sent a Karinda Wuji. Yabush Tagandu, then he hitana, then Arson did Samar.
So, all of the different Buddhas, all of these different deities and practices, they all are aspects or facets of the one Buddha, the one enlightenment, the one pure mind, the one Buddha mind. And to help us understand that, we can understand through the sort of things we were looking at earlier today, that our mind has so many aspects. It can have so many different thoughts, so many different feelings. The variety is almost endless. But all of those different thoughts and feelings are the feelings of what? They're the feelings of one mind, which does this and does that. So just as all of the thoughts and feelings are the feelings of one mind, so all of these different aspects of the Buddhas are aspects of the one pure mind.
Sonji Hisona Sonji Jaton Trumpa Karayana Katuma Hakonudu. Sanji the Hisona. Not to Jaton Trumpa Karayana Hakonudu. That take him mother Jiji was some of the pitchables and thing out of touchable second Katuma.
This is delightful. This is delightful. This is why Rinpoche is having a good chuckle and looking very happy. This is delightful, because if we understand that all of these different Buddhas that we practice, these different aspects that we do sadhanas for, if we understand that all of those are facets of the one Buddha mind, it makes it so easy and understandable and delightful just the same as when we understand that whether the mind is happy, sad, this way, thinking this, thinking that, it's all aspects of the mind, and if we can understand that mind, then we've understood all of those different aspects. It's very delightful.
So
we're all going to get delightful very quickly. We're going to be delighted rapidly. So let's all meditate well, then let's all get really happy very quickly. So with the simple explanation that we had in the first part of this talk, we have an explanation of the outer pledges of Vajrayana, the pledges of the 5 Buddha families. Now, the next thing we'll look at are the vows of the highest Yoga Tantra, the Anuttara Yoga Tantra. And there are several reasons for this. One is that most people here have probably received many empowerments, and for the most part, the empowerments we receive are Anuttara Yoga Tantra empowerments, highest Yoga Tantra empowerments. So it's good to know what the samaya, the commitments of such a level of empowerment is. This is one point. But then also, as we saw in the previous days, as we went through the self-liberation vows, when we get to the highest level of vow, which is the bhikkhu's vows, then they incorporate everything that's below them. They're not something different, it's a building up, so that's the largest set. If you've got those, you've automatically got all the other commitments, going down through novice, through layperson's commitments. So in that way, if we know what the vows of the highest tantra, the highest yoga tantra are, then there, because it's the highest level, it includes all of the levels of the tantras leading up to that, the other 3 levels of tantra. So what we'll look at in the highest yoga tantra vows are the 14 root commitments of Anuttara Yoga Tantra and the 8 main subsidiary commitments of Anuttara Yoga Tantra.
다 디노니 다 짜와 시진다고 가리래라나 다 타도 히라 니라 때니 너는 다 있음이 명량거 다 짜와라고 저디고 바래 너가 다 짜와 시진다고 다 들리지라 티바래 동보 다 짜위 동아시 저기로지도 짜동 저기서 짜와 시진다고 동도.
So these are called the 14 main vows, and they're the 14. So these 14 or root vows. What is the root of the commitments? What is the root of what's happening in this tantra? The root is the union of wisdom and skillful means. There's wisdom, deep understanding. There is skillful method, and these 2 need to be totally integrated so that they're not 2. These 2 need to be inseparable. So these vows that we nurture are the ones to preserve this, or nurture this union of wisdom and skillful means.
아디노니 동보 다 동보는 다 로펑 라나다 라마라나다 다 데니라
So the first vow is to respect the Vajra master, and this means that one's own guru or the teachers of Tantra, the ones from whom one learns Vajrayana.
Tate karira uchi relana ta sijaga sono tongana na ta lamal menya lema lana na ngala menya lema jiga jira kenza da uchi yobareti te ta tindi mare ta lama seje tela ta nyolen chi che gri tela na lama tena ngaro gonti ki yoba mare nyolen se ti ki yoba mare Zavata sarati dio pare dina lamatele ti dio pare ti dongola ti dio pare narosi jiten pi penana lodanda uchi sunayon ta gegen tala ti dio pare gegen ya pucho na ngala yo te ya punja ko mare gegen ya pu mena ngala yo te ya pu yo ba mare gegen ka ta nu du cho chi lomatele ona lomatayon ya pucho mare so gegen la roli dio pare pe tenda ore 너는 송하고 명란 시에디 되라나 무드 통진 용사든 다 살리 롤리도 그러지나 라말라 롤리도 바리 다더 자위 동아 동보더 더 저거 말이
We'll look at these commitments in terms of their opposite, that is to say, what is a downfall. So we're looking actually at the 14 root downfalls of Vajrayana. We're not so much looking at what we need to do as the things that we'll do that will spoil, that will ruin our samaya. So the first of these is, we already did that, it's related to the master or the teacher, and it's to respect the teacher. So then to disrespect the teacher is the first root downfall. And now this may sound a bit strange. It may sound like some sort of way of ensuring that teachers are never criticized. It could be understood wrongly. It could be understood in a very negative way. The way to understand it is very straightforward. It's when we practice Vajrayana, then if we don't have a teacher, someone to show us what to do, someone to guide us in the practice, then certainly on our own we're never going to achieve anything. The whole thing depends on the presence of a skilled teacher. This is not some strange magic, it's the same in many circumstances. When we're at school, when we're learning, when we're being educated, it's very easy to see that how much we learn depends on the quality of the teacher, but also how much we heed the teachings that are being given and respect the teachings that we're receiving. It's a very simple mechanism from that point of view, very similar. In Vajrayana, because it's dealing with our mind, then the teachers give teachings, and all of that is the root of our own accomplishment, our own achievement. And to maintain a pure connection with that is very important.
가리라 오지 무슨 거 말이라나 다지 주 몸보 견도 말이 주께서 몸보요 말이 뭐 당제라 연나용 가 통화도 자동용도 말이지나 또 요아 말이 또니 요사가 자도도 가리라나 가도 선된절라마 송 말이 다 너는 시작 송노 동거나 다 가도 선된절라마라나 옹거 아니 저히 명어대 다 대선시어 봐라 가드 선대시 봐래 니 시어나 니대도 지 시어나 가드 지대 다 옹거 지나나 다 가로서 너는 옹 용수 좀 바꿔게 제히 지나 다 지대 당지 송하고 지대 니 명어대라나 다디 권타 자 롱 티레 라소비 디 강타 몽보 단들이서 강거가 안들이 세니디 조디 용다고 요게다고 마인바 그 명어 고니리리 들이서 강거바리 라 다든지 세지도 대답 가드 스네제 라마라 이게 강거바리.
Now, of course, to say to disrespect a Vajrayana teacher is a very sort of broad and vague statement. And when we go into the details, then it can become quite complicated as to which of all the different teachers it is, what needs to happen to make a root downfall. To have lost the vow, to have broken the samaya, then that we need to know what sort of a teacher and what needs to actually be done that qualifies as disrespect. As far as the teacher is concerned, then it's not just any Vajrayana teacher that happens to be. It's somebody from whom we've received either empowerments, it's one thing, so it's an empowering Lama. It's somebody, second thing, who has given us explanation of the Tantras, that's the second thing. And third, it's somebody who has passed on the oral instructions of the lineage. So the empowerment, that means someone who's given the empowerments. Explaining the Tantras means not necessarily going through the ceremony of the empowerments, but explaining the meaning of the tantric practices or of the Tantras in general from the scriptures. And then thirdly, passing on the oral instructions. This means the ones who teach the chanos, the energies, and so on, these secret or inner practices. So it's to disrespect one of those.
Tani ta ngaroso kajib disano tona ta zailama de karil ndawo jungusangale dina ta ngoteke choje chimbi ngotoke 다 ngotonke pena lama jendawo jisani ngoto hyona katsoma zailama re dina deyung mare ngo su troyo da ngarola ngo troyo ngote ni ngo tonke su troji wona delana zailama zongo bare.
Now, that explanation of who is the Vajrayana master is a general one in the Tantric tradition. And in fact, the definition of what's called the Mula Guru or the Root Lama varies according to the tradition. In our Kagyu tradition, the Root Guru or the Mula Guru is defined very clearly and very specifically. It is the person from whom one receives the pointing out of the nature of mind. That is one's root guru. So that needs to have happened before one has a root guru.
Ta ngoyong chome ta tenirawo jina ta lama meba aridina ta ngarongo tena ta kyu teni gad chekyu ngarong seina senla pentu chekyu gad chekyu ta seina ta dera zailama zongo nga dijirenga tendi.
So if one hasn't yet got to the stage of recognizing the Buddha mind, recognizing the true nature of mind, then does that mean you don't have a root teacher? Well, technically, according to the definition, yes. But Rinpoche says to his mind, until that time happens, then whichever guru it is who's been the kindest to us, who's taken us the furthest, who's nurtured us the most, is perfectly fine to think of that person as one's own root guru.
Dini zawi tuma nyuma la ta yi yan lo sombi yan lo yowi yan lo ta tu ge yan lo si ta yi thong ba chong ga ba re ta te yi chong na dini za tu nyuma re.
Oh, yan ta shi ru na ru ji. De sabi tong la.
Oya yi yan lo. Ya sombi yan lo somba.
Ah, yeah.
Sombi yan lo ikyo somba. Yowi yan lo yowa. Rong yan nusi tu yi yowa. Oya ta tu ge yan lo 다 용조. 뭐야? 이게 총나? 되니 자동 용 말이.
Nipadang Shipadi, Nipadi.
성비야로 성노 당연히 되게 오마.
In order for there to be a root downfall, then there need to be 4 conditions present in the action of disrespect. First of all, the basis, that is to say, the guru himself, herself, the guru, needs to be proper. Someone who qualifies as a guru to whom disrespect means breaking the vow. That's the first thing. Secondly, there has to be the intention, the motivation to disrespect. There has to be that motivation or intention. Thirdly, the action of disrespect needs to be entered into. So it's not just the idea of disrespecting, it is something needs to be done. And fourthly, it needs to have been completed as intended. It needs to have been completed.
다 이게 가리를 되나 기한로 동보도 이거 라마님바 라마 메나 나로라 동안 좀 말이 되게 거기도 이게 가리거리 되나 이게 라마님바 그 말이 동보.
So first of those is the basis. There needs to be a guru in this scenario, otherwise there's no downfall.
더니나 썸바 썸바나 뭐 비생 뭐생 오메나 다 거반데 오메나 룽어 그 디소라서 바가다 노바시 라마라 뭐야 라마 두저리 세카갈라 더니 라마라 거반데 뭐야 더니 라마라 두디라서 바시 니주시 다 신도 소노
Second,
썸바 소노 되고 그 말이
Secondly, there needs to be the intention. This means that before the actual action is done, one needs to have been intending to harm in some way the guru, or one needs to have been intending to insult the guru, or one has been thinking critically of the guru, preparing in some way to insult or to harm.
더니는 요하나 무슨 런에 뜨니 다 뭐고 거니 매 뭐야 생거 거니 다배 근치 첨보 생거 뒤 문이 히딩거 배 두저 상니 더니 로고 거니 데발라서 봐 논지 두저 때다 들리지도 무슨 런에 뜨봐 요와.
Third is the actual action, and this action means that one actually does the harm, whether it's a physical harm or one says something which is insulting, and that action, mainly with the speech, usually with the speech, needs to be accompanied by the mind which thinks negatively about the teacher. And also this can be an action of mind where through the intention that came before, some actual decision is reached in the mind, which is harmful to the bond.
더니 다들 다 다들은 다 틀린데봐. 뭐야 틀린데봐라나 다 가서 던지나 주소 이겨라고 이미 이거진 차줄라고비 차질인데 다 주소 열리 판디소나. 더니 맞자던 주말에 주소 이겨라고 말이 주소 상라고 지레서나 당한디 마서 문이상 된디서나 동안주 터문도 그래지나 틀린데 터말이 더니 동아마주나 bom본다고도 다 파니진다고 된디 연발을 쳐로 말이 뭐 자이 동안 맞는 유 터말이 다 대인디 되나 더여 무슨 총소나 더니 문이 자던 주 말이 자던 유나 더니 그다음에 미도 말이 그다음에 효사 말이.
Then the fourth thing is the completion. Now completion here needs to be understood in the sense that one session, if you remember from yesterday, a session is 4 hours. 4 hours if 4 hours have gone by without something being done to repair this, then the action has how can you say, this negative action has run to its completion. During those 4 hours, during one session of the day, that action isn't complete. It's not a negative action because there's a possibility of repairing it. Beyond the 4 hours, then it's gone past repair. So this means that if, say, a couple of hours after doing something negative or saying something negative, one suddenly realizes what a harmful thing that is, then it's still possible to repair it, in which case it becomes not a root downfall, but a branch downfall, a subsidiary downfall. It's still a negative thing, but it doesn't mean you lost your samaya for that practice or for that teacher. So then, now the second of the 14 is to go beyond the boundaries of the Buddha's teaching, is how it's phrased. This transgressing, let's say, of the Buddha's teachings means that, or the main teachings of the Buddha, or we can say the main teachings of the Guru, because we receive them very often through our Guru. The main teachings are about what is to be done and what is not to be done, what's to be avoided. So then, if we're doing what the teacher or the Buddha's teaching has told us not to do, or then this means we've transgressed the Buddha's teaching or the Guru's command, and it's a root downfall. And for that, then the same applies. For it to be a root downfall, there needs to be the basis, there needs to be the intention, there needs to be the action actually done, and then the 4-hour period needs to have been elapsed without doing anything to rectify it. Now, in this case, the basis for this downfall is that there does need to have been an instruction that's received. We need to have been told or been taught to do something or not to do something. The second aspect is the intention, and there the intention needs to be the intention to go against that command, to go against that advice, and this needs to be for somebody who understands the advice. If there's been a misunderstanding, or there isn't yet a proper understanding of what's being taught, then it's not this root downfall. But when you know very clearly what you ought to be doing and didn't ought to be doing, and then still you're thinking about not doing it, then that's the wrong intention.
Somba. Da yowa. Da yowa da wuji na, da karin da wuji la na. Da ngu se da di long do do mentan ba. Menti pe tang la sho ba. Long do da da me ji bi du jiao li ba. Pa du jiao de pa mo bong ba. De ni da de ni xie go de. Somba yowa.
The actual action is fairly obvious. So then whatever one's been instructed to do, then intentionally you don't do it. Or whatever you've been instructed not to do, then intentionally you do it. I think that's right.
Then yowa ta yowa na telling di ba. Moya telling di tu so zo so na then to wa ngun yu lu de so yo nda wo jing ni pe go re. Moya ta.
Then the fourth aspect is the same as before, that is to say, if this is not rectified within one period of the day, within 4 hours, then it leads to a downfall. It is a downfall.
Then da samba no pon la chu ba do ji pon jin da che la chu ba jin da che ba ma di da de la ko re samba.
The third root downfall is to be angry at one's spiritual siblings, at one's Dharma, or in this case Vajra, brothers and sisters.
Ta di pon la chu ba jin che de la na ma da ba yo ba de. Chang yong ga xie yin che se ji de, xie xia ge che ji yo ba de. De ni ne rin yin che se ji yo ba de, do zu ta rin bo ge che. De ni ne nie yin che se ji yo ba de, ta nie bo ge che. Ta nie bo da. Yin che. Then non di pinche se sa yore doji paru la na ta kare che ba mandi non di pache. Non di pache na e no ngaro so za son da wo che bo. No no ma da wo ko che. No ma da wo ko che di. Ta che de la no ba yo ba re.
Naso. Ni pa kare.
O rin che to rin bo. To rin bo che. To rin bo che. Da dong bo si yin che ma re si sha ge che. Dong bo. Ya teni shisha ga da bena mo xie ji jin da wo ge shisha ge che bo xi yin che xie yong zu bena xi lo se la gong da shisha ge yong zu xie zhao xie zhao c'est xie di xie zhao ge xie da xie nong ba song ji ba gu ni ma rong su di jin da wo yo ra di xie xi yin che de ni ne ta rin bo ge che de ni die zo ta nie bo ge che de ni nong ma ge che da da de ni ma da ba yo re.
When we look at the definition of the basis for this, then these well, let's call them siblings, then we get 4 categories. There are general ones, and this means generally our fellow Dharma practices. So that's very general. There's no particular connection between us and the other person except for the fact that we are all Dharma practices, Buddhists. The second one is remote connection, where there is some personal connection with the person. It's not just they're another Dharma person we don't know, but there's some remote connection. The third one is there's a close connection, when there's quite an intimate bond between us through practice. And the fourth one is actually a connection through family, when those people are in the same family as ourselves.
Ta xin che se je ta ka re de wo ji lo ko wa re la na. San che tang je la ko wa re. San che tang je ka re zu xin che ba re la na. San che tang je je la na de ki bi ni bo je ba re. Ma ro si sha je pa chao de ba re. Jin da wo re de ba re. Ka re de tang je ge je la na ye de ki bi ni bo je ba re. Do. Mo ya ndo du bo re mo re ya bo re san che re du bo re se je mo du. 너나 냐와 이나라 여도 이나 던로 이나라 너나 리주 생체 말로 바 탕체 그 jelana dewa hibi ni bojen obare to shisha ga che da bojen anda 롱이 그리 기바 쳐디오 바리 달라 신기라 바리.
You need to correct something I just said. And this is about the first category, the general one. It's not just Buddhists in general, it's all sentient beings in general. Sentient beings in general. So then the reason for this is that every single sentient being has Buddha nature. The Buddha nature exists very naturally. It's called the naturally existing potential of Buddha nature. And because each and every being has this, then we should respect and be kind to them and so on equally. And we're connected to them through that.
Dinina nipada riminchire. Ta riminchela nomba sonjiba shisha la koare. Ta shisha ta mejiri. Donana temen yinanda, texian do yinanda, ho yinanda, nomba sonjiba shisha ta meji jibanda uchodio pare. Dinana riminchela nomba sonjiba shi yongzu nomba yinba katswa la koare.
And it's the second one, those with whom we have a remote connection, which are the other Buddhists. And so there, the remote connection is that whether they be a Hinayana practicer, Mahayana practicer, Vajrayana practicer, we are all related. Besides being related through Buddha nature, we are related, we are siblings through practicing the Buddha's teaching.
농가 제라 바리 농가 제라 바다 다 가리리라나나 다쇼 지바 다와 지바 쇼바 지바 제라 몰라 바리 또 가자로 고가 바리라나 비나나 농바 송지바 카츠마 다바 지바 바 마리 대신 대면이 다와 만다 바요 바리 쇼바요 만다 바요 바리 다 드리디라 따라고 만디 드니 가리리라나 조 땅가롱 소라지 소노도나 Songhua nyawasa lenke katsungwa la kuwari. Songhua nyawasa lenke tila tawa jibari, songhua ka tawari, shopa yung jibari. Dunana goma shinguchi tsendong, susu tabi donba tatra yogabara. Tirizo di tila katsungwa se nong song sen la ganandra, sota shing sen hua katsungwa nyawasa lenke, wanya tawa jiba, shopa yung jiba. Ta tatra la na, nonga jila bari.
The third category are those who are close. The way it's phrased is the inner category. And those... So it's the close ones. Close ones. The close siblings are those with whom we share the same view and the same practice. So although we are fellow Buddhists with all the other Buddhists, not all Buddhists share the same view of reality, they don't all draw the same conclusions from the Buddha's teaching, and they don't all practice the same. And so here, those very close brothers and sisters within Dharma, within existence, are the ones who have a similar view and practice, and usually this means those who are also within the Vajrayana fold, because we share the Vajrayana view and our practices are similar.
Tani non ripinche. Omena kakala ngaroso doji pondo yung lagundu. Ta kakala ya non che yung lare. Ta nona non do che pare. Ta ta kariri jiru ko gare dina. Jungko jila tenba. Lama jila teni nyolen che. Nona no Marusu jo mengo on se tar hi wa ka de sinde ka sala ta cha la ma ji ko kon do nyong de hyu nyong de nyong le shi ta den ri chen kai la ka ko re.
Then the last one is called the inner is called the inner one. The last one's called the inner one, and this is ones of the same family. I'm not quite sure what I said before, but family, yeah. But it's not family, father, mother, brother, sister family. which it could have sounded like before. I'm not sure what I said exactly as the words, but it's the same family. Here it means people who are Vajra brothers and sisters because they receive the same empowerments, they've entered into the same mandala through the empowerment, they've received the same oral instructions and deep advice from the Vajrayana or Mahamudra teachings. So then these are the innermost, these are our real family, the same family.
Tati che igyorabu leswa. Tati che igyogononi ta zatu nyusa, zatu samba nyusa de karwe lana. Usu igyobat non dipinche. Moya ta. Tere zatu nyusat.
Now, although to be angry or to dispute with or to criticize any of those is not good, for it actually to constitute a root breakage of samaya, then it needs to be the object or the basis for the action needs to be somebody of the fourth group, that is a Vajra brother or sister who's received the same empowerments, same deep instructions, same mandala.
Tani ta yo karili ko gwarejina usita. Di non dipinche. Igyorinda wo chi sono tona. Oya. Tani somba na ta pe meje ko kunti khenpo. Pe du jo ngaro ko uni hite ko pe ta se ma to pa pe sen wala pe he khenpo temba. Somba. Tani yoana ta chodu ju ko ni khola na ta mambe si khola du jo la. Omena ta lungo ge de du yin na da kari she du yin na da musi long le ngo go go ni long le tu na da musi lu po go tu na da yoa. Tani ta tu no ta ti ton de pa che po pa go pe che po go ni tani tan lin di na tani tong ni wa re zai tong.
So what we looked at there in some detail are the various siblings, and we saw that the fourth group constitute the basis for losing the samaya. Then as far as the intention goes, that's the basis. Then as far as the intention goes, then this means a really aggressive mind. It means a very strong mind, and one is very, very upset at the person, very angry at the person, very jealous of the person. There needs to be a strength of negative intention that's there. The actual action is that one says something or even does something, one says something through jealousy or through whatever defilement it is. One says something aggressive, harmful, or that physically you do something that hurts the person or that injures in some way. That's the action. And then the completion is if the session goes by, let's say 4 hours go by, without that being rectified, then that's a root downfall.
Ta aroso kali khachundao tata tsamba de yobare masina pena ta lamanda wojina monchiago ta kaki ma do monchiago yapotanga lamari se khatwa yapotsi yobare yana yo ta ndi ta tong yusa samba khatwa go xero jigijila kuya jigijila na yaposi se nyunyure tende yina na aroso kakala chubaji khobare kakala ducho thembare kago lapare uni yo chubayo je logo yo lona tu ta tende se bare ta tende se cha de telana uni duso yo de ta tata se ro de telan tin za tong bare tin za tong juna tin ngaro domba khosa bare tin domba khosona tin ngok 너는 리버 문주가 땡기바 쳐라 말이 너만 메게는 리버 문주 말이 동시면은 리버 문주 송고 말이 대인디들 빼 년가 잡고 빼 리라보 좀 라바 같은 와라 용도 용가 봐 라고 빼 쳐고 말이 대인나는 롱야로가 빼 자서시 도자시 드리체 것인데
Of the different root downfalls, this third one is perhaps the most dangerous. It's the one that's really very likely of all of them. It's quite a possibility, so therefore it's something we need to be very, very careful about and wary of. Because, given the ones we've looked at so far, most people do feel very deep respect for their guru, for their teacher, and they take to heart the teacher's advice. But then with our peers, it is actually very easy to get upset. It's very easy to think badly of them. It's very easy to get into a situation where through anger or jealousy or pride, whatever poison it is, there is a negative action. And then if that's happened, and if we haven't realized the gravity of it within the 4 hours and done something to put it right, then we've lost the samaya. Losing the samaya is not a technical thing. It's not just technically we lost the vow. The vow means our connection with the practice and all of its blessing and benefits. As soon as we lose the samaya, we lose the fruition of the practice. With no samaya, no fruition. This is why this one is a great danger to be aware of. And
Tani kakala ngaronso nyomo ba chiwore muni sonjindawo mare sen la yon mandapa momboy control tani salina hware te hwa yina yon ta te zoji cheso ta yo masikala cheso ni ji ni cesar o tangan di mundi muni se gonta se muni hedingala tangaro go hyopa se ta tani sena tani tonga nyu thamndiwa tabi ngaro solo gabo hindiwa tila tamato tani ki san tan sale do la sale do ni tonga da nyu sona pe kale khabore de yana yo chiso yo ga non la dembe sani tanga di mendu a so hyo ban da wo se do jin che bo tong chi ta chi gon do chi ki la na tani ngaro so kha la ji tonga manju te ya bo da wo hindiwa de yana ni chi ki kha twa jala na Gomba no longo pare, teni gomba sonje de kache de telana, ki lama chi le ten, gomba chi gnola ni teni sedula, chi ki lo zopa shi, chi ki la na ropa shi, chi ki la de jo amare tupa maje, tin chambo sena. Genden tamba deva yang song de sonje. Ta genda ba tong jen tambo jo na be deva chi wo yin le song. Te manta ba yo na, te manta ba yo na. Deva yo ba mare, dunga yo pare, ri ona ga mare, sam chi bo yo ba mare, te teni ina 다 검바지 landing lama 지고 로마 지고 머리사지 가wan 로고는 로고사 미래 te teni indi dira chigi la dujo mji chigi la roba she chigi la zhuo ma zong ta teni chen na be ya bo da wo san diwa.
Now because we're not Buddhas, because we're human beings, it's inevitable that our minds go up and down. It's the very nature of being a human that sometimes our minds get upset, sometimes we're happy, sometimes we're sad, sometimes we like people, sometimes we're upset at them. So because we're not Buddhas, these things do happen. So if we're Vajrayana practices, then what becomes very important is to learn to recognize that and to rectify it quickly, not to let those precious 4 hours go by just stewing in the negativity. We can't stop it coming up, but what we can do is once it's arisen, we can recognize it, understand what a harmful thing it is, and then correct it. Because no matter what the situation is, no matter what other people do, how they are, whatever the details of the situation are, the most important thing is our samaya. The most important thing is this sacred bond with the practice and realization. So for the sake of preserving that sacredness within the mind, then whatever it is, we should have this attitude of, we should be able to recognize it when it happens and have this attitude, this must be sorted out within the hour, within 2 hours. That needs to be sorted out quickly. If it's just taken place in our mind, then we need to understand how harmful and dangerous that is for the mind, to do the confession, to do the purification practices. If we've actually said something or done something to another, to one of our siblings, as was described, then we need to apologize, we need to sort it out, and to make things good. It's very important that within the Sangha we learn not to harm each other, and we learn how to help each other and to help these situations not happen and to help make them good and not fester in some harmful way. In the teachings there's a quotation where it's from the Buddha where it says, "Harmony in the Sangha means happiness." Harmony in the Sangha means happiness. So it's very important not to get upset with each other. It's very important that we actually do think very deeply about how to help each other, be positive, make harmony, and how to resolve any of these unharmonious situations.
다 대가 자도 선만의 운동송. 다 이바래. 다 이바만 돌아 운이시나는 이거 선바 요한 타두시 리리라 이래 시니 다 기자시 드니시 거래데 알아서 두서 운동문데 대인왕이 다 때문에도 더잘라 그런 리리리 신리히 제지마도 대 이거 선바 요한 타두시도 언리히 질레메.
So this takes us on to the fourth of the root downfalls, but from here on in we won't look at the details of the basis, the attitude, the actual action and the completion for each of them. These are very clearly spoken about in the text, but we just don't have the time to go through them. But by now we should have the idea that in order for there to be a downfall, then those four conditions need to be met. There needs to be the right basis, there needs to be the intention to do something, there needs to be the actual action, and it needs to run beyond the 4 hours, or however that's described for each case.
第一个这个人我可以有的了呢，别呢一个从说呢，在于东安中的嘞，一个马从今朝我今面呢上从说呢，帮不着我抢着吧嘞，等你没你着我说呢，你今年都抢的你这着吧嘞，等你这个你今着我。마 디파 지난다 도마데 제슈도 요바레 이게 진짜라고 들이 베나 자동 기라이나용 자동 만주나 bom본 줘바레 bom본 만주나 니진 줘바레 데이나나 다 대차를 희차시나 동아 효동도 가가 요바레 다 더거 이게 전이나 자이 동아 문인 주지 선대면나 동아 메레데 bom본 줘바레 데니 니데면나 니지도 데니 니지 다 드니라고 마 니파 총으로 번도와라 대니 우수도 저거지 진짜 되니 내와래 되면 대이판 케케라고 시 맞지 이걸 말이 따라요 진짜 요래 다 진짜다 하고서나 되니 이기마 결혼소가 레갈리즈 하고
This way of establishing these four factors, the basis, the intention, the action and the completion, is not just a scholar's analytical pleasure. It's very important because when all four factors are present, then there has been a root breakage. There is a root downfall. The samaya is lost. So that's very important. If there aren't all four, if one of those four is missing, and there are three, then it becomes what's called a subsidiary downfall. I'm not quite sure if that's the best word, but it's not a root breakage. You haven't lost the samaya completely. There's been damage, but it's not damage so you've lost it. And then if there's only two of those present, it's called a failing, a samaya failing. Something still needs to be done about it, but again, you haven't lost the vow completely. So we need to know those four, because then whether one's lost the vow completely or made some damage or a failing, whichever one of those three, then the remedy needs to correspond, how we restore it, how we put it right.
The
fourth root downfall is to abandon loving care.
다 샹바 동화 세지 다 가르치를 고거 말이지나 생체 통제라 다 샹바 동화라 고거 말이 다 가서 가서 쇼지 생비 담바 기비 가서라 생체 통제라 샹바 세거라시더니 뭐뭐 바라티 도마들 다 된다고 너나나 생체 통제라 샹비 류동 다 된디 세요나 더니 동안이 말이.
So who does this apply to? It means loving care for, the way it's expressed in Tibetan is for all sentient beings, which means that if you lose loving care for even one being, then it's no longer all sentient beings. So we would rephrase that in English as to lose love, to abandon loving care for any being.
더니 너 나바리 뭐야? 다 나바 너 쇼시 지산 냥바.
That's all. The fifth one is to lose the bodhicitta.
다 대가리 나오지라 날레레라는 로니라 따와 넘바도 봐 미바. 송호 까니 히피고 따와야 보미에 이간더 되니 부모님 소절 대와라 처니 되니 그와 저 되니 시선하는 되니 송하고 자위 동안 나바니 말이 다 되니 지라 그거 말이 되니 되나 다 따와도 문제 이간더 다 부모님 소절 대와티 송지 토비 탄다고 진노샤 되니라 시다 되니 시디나는 되니 자위 동안 나바니 말이.
So this has a precise meaning. The way it's described, and in fact what it really means, is that one loses the highest view. Now that highest view doesn't mean a philosophical view in this case. It means the actual state of your mind. From being within the highest view, bliss, voidness, however we define it, that is lost. Now this is lost in very specific circumstances. This refers to intercourse. So if that highest view is lost in intercourse, then it means there'll be no longer control of the inner energies. And because of that, there'll be climax and ejaculation, and that loses the vow.
더니는 주바 취라 못 바래. 다 취라 못 발라나.
So then number 6 is to disrespect the spiritual teachings.
다디 취라 못 발라지도 다 롱니 변하는 성화 반이바 키래. 다는 노라소바 전타 현바 다음지 늦저레시 다야보 요바 말이시. 드니 뭐다 드니 시나나 드니 자도 주반여도 뉴말이 대인들아 취라 회반여도 시 드니 시 냐말이.
So one example of this would be that if one is a Vajrayana practicer, then any disrespect towards, any despising of the Sutrayana teachings, Hinayana teachings, Sutrayana teachings, causes one to lose is a root downfall, loses the samaya.
다 때라는 이렇게 고거와리 사바나고지. 가리 고거와리라나 베나 공소지. 다 녀한테 답이나 베나 다 때라는 태바ချင်း별론라 고 트지지 이나 문이 고기 조치한다고 주어나 더니 녀한테 주야 야보 말이 다 저로 태바친 분연래 시글리 되고 때려 저보를 펜신다고 지 통지 그 하고나 더니 매바신다 리리 가리드나 저보라 펜 통도 와리 연래 여러 종종 통도 와리 더니 다고이나 주연바 매바신다 리리 대답 많이 방아롱 거 초동 그거니 인생 매 이간다 롱도 초동도 녀거 단담라 롱롱 전타라 때니 전타 존니 더니 주연바는 매바신나 더니 자동 요와리 되면 롱도 매니 이게라 펜도 버자비 셔도 온 전타 이게라는 더니 미발라서 바시 드니신다 더 동안주 말이 가리라나 롱도 요바 말이 rondon mari, Jupola Panto by Javi Shadow, then is here you bari, Tenina, Duanju Mari, Dana Don, this is Misanda with Haku.
Now, this disrespect for other teachings, or we need to understand clearly what this means. If what one says about any sort of spirituality, and in particular about the Sutrayana level of teachings or a different level of teachings, different view within the teachings, if the reason that we're saying this is not so good is through intelligence and pure motivation, that is, it's something that's going to be very, very helpful for the person, then that doesn't break this vow. It's when the reason that we're saying this isn't so good is out of our own egotism and any of the defilements. It's through pride, it's through jealousy, it's through attachment to one's own view, it's through extending the ego into one's own particular Buddhist school or view, and for that reason deprecating another one, saying, oh, that's no good, our one's the best, then that breaks the vow. But if there really is the opportunity, if somebody is involved in one way, and one can explain without egotism or bias, that actually, if they can, go to another way, this might be more helpful, it might be better, there's more qualities in the practice, that doesn't break this vow. So we need to understand clearly what it means. The seventh downfall is called disclosing secrets. Disclosing secrets. And this means revealing teachings to people who are not ready for them. This could be revealing Vajrayana teachings, the secret Vajrayana methods of winds or whatever it is, to people who are not ready to practice them, not right, suitable people. Or it could be telling the Mahayana teachings of voidness to somebody who's not ready for them. So what happens is that not only is there no benefit for the person because they're not ready, there's some harm because it creates a resistance, it makes usually a weird situation that makes them fear or resist those teachings in the future because they had some input from you in the wrong circumstances. Java Janso Gam, Denchu Gam, Pomo Gam, that the Sendua, Lupondo, the Inquajato Te, Songhog Jidin and Song about it. Tandala Nichi and the Dupoche and the Lacalite, that the Seguana. You don't want you to worry. Carried in a Pombo line at the Gam, Pombo line up, then you had do nothing under a child water. That in the Pombola Nichi, that in this year. Jetta Ponsanda Wujit. The eighth root downfall is called harming the aggregates, abusing the aggregates. Sati says abusing one's own aggregates. The aggregates is just a Dharma way of saying your body. Abusing your own body. So this means that anything we do that harms the body, for instance, overdoing austerities, damaging the body, having a negative attitude towards our body, is breaking or is going against this particular samaya. Because in this level of Vajrayana teaching, that is to say the highest Yoga Tantra, then the body is the deity. It's not even the home of the deity, it is the deity. So any harm that one does to oneself is harming the divine. It's harming what is sacred. And so the view we need to have towards this precious sacred existence is a very pure one, and the actions we need to have towards it shouldn't be ones which endanger it or harm it. The ninth one is it's called to disbelieve what is pure in nature. So, what is pure in nature here is the profound view. It is the profound view of shunyata or voidness, and that is actually the truth about the nature of things, the nature of reality. And so to disbelieve that, to criticize it, doubt it, make others disbelieve it, for the Vajrayana practitioner is a root downfall. This means that when somebody has the opportunity to be doing a deep practice, whether it be the deity practice, and or if they're practicing Mahamudra, or the yogas, whatever it is, and then you say to them, "Oh, you don't want to do that? No, that's no good, or that's dangerous, whatever it is. You're better off saying manis, you're better off saying Om Mani Padme Hum, or you're better off doing some simple practice." Then if they have that opportunity for something which is very profound, and you're trying to take them away from that and steal that opportunity, then that's what breaks this vow.
노나는 뒤바지나 숑바 먹어봐. 근데 드라발라서 바시거든.
The next one, number 10, is to love the wicked. Is to love the wicked. And so we need to understand the meaning of this. Of course, in one way, we need to have love for each and every sentient beings. But this means befriending, supporting people, those, not just people, spirits, energies, human beings who are really harmful, who are causing violence and pain, and who are really dangerous and harmful to other beings. And so this actual befriending of them is what causes this downfall. Now, there are some exceptional stories of advanced teachers, and those advanced teachers who have such wisdom and such power, when they realize that somebody can't be tamed, it's one of these evil people, cannot be tamed by good sense, common sense, loving kindness, words of wisdom about caring for other beings, when they're hopeless cases of violence and aggression, then there are cases of great masters who've actually killed those people. But when they kill them, they have the capacity of transporting that person's consciousness. Once the consciousness leaves the dead body, they can, because it's a different state of being, they can show them the error of what they've been doing and lead that consciousness to a very pure, wholesome, loving, liberated state. So if one's got to that point, then that might be a helpful thing for the world to do. But until that point, then of course it's not good to go around killing people. And so what loses the vow here is to make sure that we're not supporting and befriending such people or such forces and energies, spirits. That's all. Number 11 is to apply conceptuality, discursive concepts, to ultimate reality. So what this means is, it doesn't mean that as soon as we think about ultimate reality we lost the vow. What this means is that ultimate reality itself, in other words, the real truth about ourselves, about the cosmos, is beyond all words. It's beyond any conceptualization at all. So if, as a yogin and somebody who's following the Vajrayana, we consciously get involved in pointless philosophizing, I think that's the best term for it, pointless philosophizing. It's a word in Tibetan, it's togewa, the people who just argue and debate and talk for the sake of it, then this is what loses the vow. But then also the basis for that is within ourselves. It is within the way we do tend to conceptualize ultimate reality. So then when we find the mind doing that, we need to bring the mind back to what is called auto-cognizant primordial wisdom, or self-knowing primordial wisdom. In other words, our knowing of the mind needs not to be through words and ideas, but it needs to be within the vivid self-knowledge that happens in the moment of awareness.
za tu jini ba.
Okay. I think it's okay to carry on. I don't know. Yeah, it seems okay. So then the number 12 is to cause our fellow Buddhists to lose faith, to cause believers to lose faith.
Ta ta karira ju ko gaware jena maroso soho nyo selenke ga mat na jo ba na jo phongo inanda rad shwa inanda nona soho nyo selenke tie thang chi ji ta de ba che thang chi la san ji chi de le de ba mien khe shi tie thang chi ga ta wa ta ndi na jo ba ti kari shi de de cha shi de song ji nona na sho ba de jo Samba du job. Moya Nonano Ngo Goni, Car Goni, Tendi du job, large Tendi Sero, Teba Chatanti, Tepa Mizishe, that Tendi Senayo, Zatu Kini Bandanuare.
This means that it's usually a failing of speech. It comes through what we say to other people, and whether these be yogis or yoginis, people practicing Vajrayana, whether these are renunciates, monks, nuns, then people who have faith and who are happy in their faith, is to say things which put down what they're doing, give them doubts. Through your criticism, they start to doubt and they lose the faith in their own path. So if you're saying, "Oh, what you doing there? That's a load of rubbish that you're up to. Or, what on earth's that? It's no good for anybody." That sort of thing, people really have doubts. Then if there's the intention, and if you actually say it, and so on, if all the factors are there, it's the 12th root downfall.
Yeah, then you know, Johnny Ba.
Chusumba.
Johnny, or Justin Ba. Oh, yeah, no, don't think it's oh, yeah, Matemba. Don't think it's Matemba.
The 13th root downfall is failing to accept the various substances which are presented during the tantric activities, during the empowerments or the feasts and so on.
Ta don't think it's Lana Karina Kogarina, ta Lamejika, so the Hanga, the Sangala Supasi, ta Moboki on your body, ta the Tayon, don't think it's you like your body. Ta yan yong pena ngaroso chongkon dao chok nam ta teni se di telana teni na di ka salana hyanchong na med maro ba go la ba re teni yong la sa yo ba re ta teni ko che do de thang che ta di dong de ma le ta teni se na na dong han yo ba re zai tu ma di jasan ba.
So this means that in this level of tantric practice, where highest yoga tantra, then very often part of the offerings or part of the substances used are the representations of the 5 meats and the 5 nectars and so on. So it's not to consume those, or sometimes in the what we call the tsok or the Gana Chakra gathering, then there's a tiny offering of alcohol, and even though those who have the monastic precepts shouldn't take alcohol, then in those situations it's perfectly okay to take the few drops of alcohol which are given in those circumstances. This sort of thing.
Ta hong te la no hicha chi se ga ba re. Hong te so chi ndi hicha chi je jo ba re. Ta hong sa cha la ga re se jo ba re la na. Oh, Tanga, Tuzire, Seron, Shape, Momboga, Chompe, Momboga, Tanga, Chom, Togats, Shanlashi, Valins. Oh, yeah, Shanchope, Mombo, Sheni, Tata Shanlashi, Serotini, Radishua and Da, Donana, Dombachen, Tetrico, Chom Momboton. Oh, yeah, Ta, Shayon, Tara, and the Shanlashi, Shap Mazaki, Mombosa, Ta Sajala, Tendio,
Dina, So then to understand this more clearly, then first we should know that in some countries or in some places, when there are these Vajrayana festivities, sok and so on, then there is alcohol, there are the meats, and so on those occasions, those who normally never touch alcohol, they have a vow not to take alcohol or drink, and those who are normally vegetarian eat meat. And there are some who think that because there's a blessing, then the more you drink, the more the blessing, and the more meat you eat, the more the blessing.
Ta tachara jina no muni tawado dem tadina ro la ta kupayo pamare yana yo ya thonche shanla she gana kali khabore muni she ko chuna ko chung zong sa jin chung le sa ji lan ro shanla she gana ya bun diwa chung ka zong shanla chuan ro ri sun tu na yo ya bu chuan ro ra tani hya hon no lan ro hye hya sa lan ro hya ka zong la shanla she gana pe ya bun diwa ka zong la pe pa ro ra
So,
Dendi shanla yo na, shanla she thana. Yapore. Deni kare she na chung le sa lan ro ga re. Chung le sa la pe chung mo bo le ko ba re. Deni la shanla she go. Hoya hya hon no lan ro ga re shanla she. Hya hon no la pe se ja tong tong tro ga hya go ba re. Ta la shanla she go.
So we have to understand if the actual blessing is in the booze, in the alcohol, and if the blessing is in the meat itself, then just in order to get blessing, all you need to do is go to the pub or go to the butcher's. There's lots of booze in the pub, there's lots of meat in the butcher's, and so if it's simply by the fact of consuming alcohol or consuming meat that somehow there's blessing, and the more you take, the bigger the blessing, then there's stacks of blessing in the wine shop and in the butcher's. It's not like that.
Muni chumare, chulure, zamare, songhua kayavare, songhua no tindi kanchon la yundu se talana zan la di chude, chumayin panya de segavare.
So if one understands it in that sort of a way, then that's not Dharma, that's not the practice.
Ta shenla she tangkyan da dielo do narupa la go bare. Ta tindi chin do ina, tindi muni shenla she to ina ma hitama do kali khabore.
So there's a symbolic meaning to the taking of alcohol and the meat and the representations of the various meats. But beside the symbolic meaning, the actual use of alcohol or other things as part of spiritual practice is something that very, 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 very few people can master. So when we go back to the time of Tilopa and Naropa, then they could take quantities of those things and do extraordinary things.
Tanyina, ta ngaro so yongzu genye, yimbato, tani gesa, genong, tamba che yana, tani chongtu nyamare. No yo mare ti songhwa no ni ta xiangqiu mie de marwa xiangqiu ki songwa bare ta tan yin ti ta gari xie ge bare la na ta ni ka ga wa mi ba xie ge bare ti ni ga wa mi ba de gari xie ge bare de na pe na qiu go no la ban de ne ri ji xie ni ne ri ji xie ge bare ta ten di xie na songhwa do ga wa yo ba mare gari de na ta long xiu zhen de wo ji xie bare no ji de bare de zu ma ji zhen da zhu ju re 너와도 가도 말이 문이 총통 봐 말이 되나 너가 내가 감이라고 좀 말이 되면 총 전화 진도 로데나 야보요 봐 말이 되니 향다고 지나 나 향사메라나 다 송화고 노니 총다고 노라 향요 말이 되어디 다 가리시에 그 말이라나 향사고 녀리디나 사냐 말이 되니 가리시에 거리디나 향을로 니 떼주지 Druma go combat of the library, but Druma. Roma, Roma, Ti Komala Taki, Puti Gunko, the Miomare, Ricomazo didn't the reason here. Tata Sigana, then you do about it. Tata Sega di Tira. So hawk, Nyon Sigi don't go under Pamari, the Sai non general Pare. Naro Kena Toncha don't go Pamari, Muni long so see Condoloma, Muni Saigo Jamago Jambo Pamari, that is in the Ina, don't Gamania the Panduari, Tala, Katwa Yabuji Haku.
So then, unless one is like Tilopronaropan doing those, unable to transmute totally any of those substances, then what to do? What to do specifically if someone has full lay vows, or novice monks or nuns vows, or full monks or nuns vows, when it comes to the Vajrayana Tsok, the Ganachakra feast, where there is alcohol and where there is meat amongst the offerings. Well, there's a very, very clever solution, which, because, see, the problem is, the pratimoksha vows, the self-liberation vows that one has as an ordained layperson or monk, then is that you've taken a vow not to take alcohol. You've taken a vow sometimes not to eat meat. And then, so that's one side, not to do it. And then in the Vajrayana, the actual taking of the alcohol, the taking of the meat, is part of the ceremony that you need to go through. So then, very clever solution is for the alcohol, then one just dips the tip of the finger onto the alcohol and takes one drop and places it on the lips. That way, you've taken it, because that's what the Vajrayana ceremony requires. You actually take it, you've taken it, but then you've not ingested it as alcohol, so you've not drunk alcohol, you've honoured your pratimoksha vows. That way, everything's all right. You've taken part in the Vajrayana feast, and you've observed your pratimoksha vows. As far as the meat goes, then if there's a vow not to eat meat, and very often in the Ganachakra feast there are offerings of meat, then what one does is take the tiniest fibre. It says it's like a hair of a bee, if that's the right word. One fibre of fur of a bee. A fibre of bee fur. Sounds good. One fibre of bee fur is worth of meat, so that's the tiniest of quantities, and then you just take that. You can't really call that eating meat, because there's not enough of it to give you the savour and the digestion and all of those things which really makes eating, but similar to before, it has actually been taken. So one takes the tiniest little fibre of the meat, and then in that way you've taken the meat. If you're a Mahasiddha, it's different. It's different explanation. If you're a Mahasiddha, you'll know exactly what to do with those things. That's the 14th one is to disrespect a female. So this might be good news for some people.
자이 동안 제기 받는 요아래 무슨 해 봐도 다 안디 요르도 요롱 제니 테카 많이 봐 그 보면라 해 봐시 드리제나 든 자동는 요아래.
So in the various tantras in other places there are all sorts of ways of classifying human beings, of classifying amongst them, of classifying ladies, women, whatever we call them, members of the female sex. But here it's nothing to do with that. This covers anybody, any female whatsoever. As soon as there's any way of disrespect, of putting that person down, of thinking or saying something which places them in a lower position, then that is what goes against the vow. And then when there are the four circumstances, it's what causes a root downfall.
다 대라고 대소치 기체치 제조래.
맞어?
네면 보면 땅가 세조사면 세소나 소화가 dom바콘로산데 소화 ngaja시에 세조문데.
This is because of an inner disrespect for the female sex in general. It doesn't mean that in any circumstances we can never say anything bad about any woman.
가리레라나 얘나는 론이라 펜바샤위 셔도 달레가 두정라고 질리 다 드리마시 조두정에 야보문디 보면 야보문디 드린다고 시 콜라 펜바샤위 셔도 인페바시나 던지바리 뭐야 펜바샤위 많이 봐다 초동라고도 연바고 다 페바시나 드니 송환년에 시게라 동안요아리 그냥 펜바샤위 셔도 메나 드니 좀만디.
So the definition of this vow is not in what is said, like a legal technicality. It is in the mind of the sayer. So it could well be that by pointing out somebody's faults we can really help them. If the motivation is purely altruistic, really and truly for the other person's good, and we can help them understand that what they're doing is not a good thing, and that it'd be better if they did something which was less harmful or more positive or more skillful or whatever, then that's fine. It's helpful. It's truly helpful. But when there is any sort of criticism that comes through self-centered concern, that comes through one's own egotism, one's own pride, one's own attachment, whatever it is, when there's that self-centered, ignorant motivation, then that's what breaks the vow.
드니 기마 조롱소라 보면노라 연바가 뒤져라 메파시고나 조롱소 조롱소 자도 저기 봐 주하고 세 조롱 들어가고 그래 연바가 조롱소라 뒤져라나 자도 저기 봐 주하고 세 조롱 팔라가 그래.
So now in the future, amongst us Vajrayana practices, if ever we catch anybody thinking negatively or saying negative things about any lady, then we could say, you know about the 14th root downfall? That's it.
Then Travachi Gochu, Travachi demand to soon rotas the rather, that Travachi care. Travatuki.
There is perhaps time for a really brief question, if there is a really brief question. Yes? The Nyaningla, the Yishinobujawa Karmapa, the Chusokinangla, the Sok Dupikap, the Chang Digimendo, Sha Digimendo, Sungendo, Digabet,
Ninjara Nikama Personal Gagana There's a Calicavre, Tenikari Carisona.
Oh dear, what to say? What to say? Because Rinpoche doesn't want to say anything against the Karmapa. But no, that seems to be what he said. Here we're explaining the traditional values. So we've even done away with this tiny little drop on the end of the finger. We've even done away with this beef hair. Did you get it? You can just not even put it to your lips. You can just, oh.
Domba san the much gela domba san carisse yo son zinda yo pare tiko ta son here de machila domba san machi de mere machila domba san care yo son zinda yo re tiko to teni ndi ngo gno ni tie so de bare ta here ta son
So there we'll leave the teaching for today, and tomorrow is the last session. Tomorrow's session on the vows is the last session on the vows. What we still have to cover are the 8 subsidiary failings in Vajrayana practice, Vajrayana Samaya, and also a consideration of how, for the Vajrayana practicer, how the 3 levels of vows can coexist and be practiced together. Are you going up now, or is there more longs? Is it straight away? Or half past? Half past. All right.